Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And today's video is all about how to feel more comfortable, better in your body. So I'm going to share with you some tips about how I did that and some things that I think can work. When I've watched these kinds of videos before, I often feel a bit frustrated because I think that a lot of the tips given involve a lot of motivation and willingness that just may not be there when you're feeling rubbish in your body. So these tips are quite varied. Some of them don't really involve any effort. Others does involve an element of willingness and sort of ready to do something about it. So I hope that there's something in here for everyone depending on where you're at and how you might be feeling now. It may not be particularly helpful for people with body dysmorphia because this video is kind of made on the presumption that you are somebody whose body image fluctuates. So some days you might feel terrible about your body, some days you might not feel as bad, but there's an element of movement. If you're struggling with body dysmorphia, some of these tips might be helpful, but I would recommend speaking to a professional if you possibly can. So, the first one came from exactly this, from noticing that the way I felt about my body from one day to the next changed. You know, some days I could feel 10 pounds heavier than I'd felt the day before. So when I actually noticed that the way I felt about my body changed, that was one thing that I started to realize and recognize in those moments when a thought came and a feeling came, was to remind myself that this feeling is temporary. Nothing stays the same, and that includes our emotions. It feels like they're never going to go anywhere, especially when we're distressed. It feels like this feeling is going to go on forever and we catastrophize it. So to catch yourself in the moment and to remember that today may be a bad day, that there will be another day when you feel better than you do now. The second one, I'm not going to spend very long on this one, it's a very quick, simple one, is to simply wear clothes that fit. When you put on something that feels too tight or uncomfortable, for a lot of people that can be a real trigger for a bad body image day. And I know we get really attached to those little numbers sewn into our clothes and what that means about us, that we wear a certain number and what it means if we're going up a number. But when you're not wearing clothes that fit you, that is going to affect how you feel in your body. So it's a really simple external one to wear clothes that are not feeling uncomfortable or too tight. The next one, again, this one came from really noticing the impact of being still all day. And this has been particularly prevalent for me recently with lockdown. My job is a pretty sedentary job anyway, but in lockdown, when I'm sitting online all day at my computer, I noticed that by the end of the day, my energy's dropped. And I feel like my energy's dropped because my body hasn't moved. When we move, energy moves around the body. Our heart rate speeds up, which pumps blood and oxygen around the body. And so I found that when I feel tired and when my energy feels low, I feel heavier. So I was noticing that towards the end of the day, I was feeling more uncomfortable in my body than I was when I got out of bed in the morning. And so this simple commitment to moving my body, to standing up and moving around, whether it's, I know exercise can be like a whole loaded area when it comes to this stuff, so it doesn't need to be thought of like that. Even pottering around, even doing a bit of housework, even going to the shops, whatever it might be that involves moving your body around is going to affect how you feel. And when we move our bodies, we have to connect body and brain in order to tell our bodies what to do. So I think that helps with how we're feeling about our bodies too. The next one is about your feelings, and it's simply to name what you are feeling. So you're having this experience of feeling uncomfortable in your body. You may be thinking, I hate my body. You may be saying, my body image is bad today. Whatever it is you're saying is going to be accompanied by a feeling or maybe several feelings. So to sit down with kind of an intention to be like, okay, I want to figure out what this feeling is. So we sit down and we check into what's going on in the body. This is how I do it. I check in and I sort of wait for a word to come back up. That's how it usually works for me. So Sometimes it's not the word I expect. The other day I sat down to do this and the word that came up was disconnected, and I could see how that was true for me, but I didn't know that that's what I was feeling until I did that. And it made me realise that I, and maybe a lot of us as well, we don't know what we're feeling half the time. We just know that we're feeling bad. But when we stop and name the feeling, for me anyway, I found that it's quite grounding. Okay, I know what this feeling is now, and it is a feeling. It's a way of processing as well, of experiencing the feeling without becoming overwhelmed. The next one actually came from a girl I used to live with, and she had heard somewhere about when you're not feeling great about yourself is to, around the house, put on some bright lipstick. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm not sure that's going to really work. And then I gave it a go, and you know what? It did do something. It's just a silly little thing. It's not going to work at a time when you're feeling really distressed. But sometimes if you start to feel your mood or your sense of self or whatever dropping, it's something that you could just try for a bit of fun. And so I mentioned feelings before, and the next one is about your thoughts. Now, I don't think we have that much control over what we feel. It's a biochemical reaction in the body, but I think we have a bit more influence over our thoughts. We can't stop thoughts from coming, but we have this capacity to notice our thoughts and to respond to them. And that's an incredible skill that we seem to have as humans. So to get really clear about what your thought patterns are around your body, because they're exactly that, they're patterns. It'll be the same thoughts coming up again and again. And when you start to recognize and you can watch old thoughts coming up, you can see how it's just old thoughts coming up. It doesn't have to mean anything. And then when you capture a thought, let's say the thought is, I hate my body and I'm really ugly. Then the next bit is the so what? Because the so what part will then reveal to you what you're making that mean. The so what part will be, well, then everybody else thinks this, and nobody will ever find me attractive, and that means I'm not as good as that person. All these different things that come up that are all part of the experience. And when we get really clear on our thoughts, they tend to have much less control over us, because we have this terrible habit of believing everything we think. And just because you think something, it doesn't mean it's true. Now the next one is a resource that really helped me, and that is this book, Body Positive Power by Megan Jane Krapp. So I didn't read this book, I listened to it on Audible, but I listened to it 3 times in the end. I started reading it, but you can see where I finished reading it, where my notes ended. And when I first saw this book, it came up on my recommendations. I looked at it and I thought, bubblegum pink, it kind of looks like it's written for teenage girls, and I'm nearly 40. So it would not have been something that would have drawn me to it originally. However, having listened to it, it's really informative, it's funny, there's a lot of her story in it as well. I love hearing people's stories. I think that's how I tend to connect to stuff. And it was one of those books for me that in just the listening to it, something shifted. So if you're really struggling with the diet mentality or feeling quite upset about weight gain, I highly recommend this book. You can go listen to it or read it. And then on that note, that kind of leads me nicely on to the next one, which is to have a look at your media consumption. What are you watching? What are you looking at all the time? If you are binge watching Love Island on a regular basis, you are being exposed to a really non-diverse, specific kind of body. And the more we're exposed to that, it's quite an unconscious process. We start building up this picture that that's what everybody is supposed to look like. And we miss the reality of it. And Instagram is a great one, like clean up your feed, get rid of stuff that is not making you feel good about yourself and start following the stuff that does. You know, the Instagram algorithm, it works in a way that it gives you more of what you want, like the universe. So just really having a look at what is it you are feeding your brain, because that is going to have an impact then on how you feel about yourself. And then the next one, which again is slightly connected to this, is to, if you're like, well, I don't know what to watch, I don't know what else to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. I love that show. And one of the things I love about it is the body confidence element. The queens have often gone through really difficult pasts, they've grown up feeling very different until they found their tribe later on. And then they come out and they emerge as these queens and they're like, I'm fabulous and I look amazing. And the bodies are quite diverse as well, and size is celebrated in all its aspects. And it's just a really fun show, which often makes me feel better about myself. And it really promotes that message of self-acceptance. The next one is to focus on how you want to feel. So a lot of the time people are quite clear on how they don't want to feel anymore. Like, I don't want to feel all these horrible things about my body. What is it you do want to feel? How is it you want to feel in your body? You might feel like that's obvious, but I think there's something about getting the mind really clear on what that is, helps you to move toward it. So for me, I want to feel connected to my body. I want to feel energized in my body. I know I'm not always going to feel that. I just want to feel comfortable and grounded and accepting, all those things. And I feel these things a lot now. And I never thought I would be able to get there unless I changed my body first. And that's what the mind will try and convince you to do. It will be like, well, in order to feel better in your body, you need to just go and get yourself a different body. Not necessarily, well, not even not necessarily true. Not true. Not in my experience anyway, and not in my philosophy about this stuff. I just think the clearer we are on where we want to go, the more likely we are to keep heading in that direction. We're going to get blown off course, but when we're like, no, this is what I'm trying to create, this is how I want to feel, we keep resetting our intention, and then we start finding the information and making the shifts that we need in order to head in that direction. The next one is about doing something for someone else. So we are very self-centric as human beings. We can only experience the world from our perspective. We can only navigate the physical world existing in our bodies. As such, it feels like we are the most important thing in the world. And the fact that our bodies are not how we want them to be is the most terrible thing that ever happened. Now, you have to be careful with this one because I don't want you to start shaming yourself about that. I think all of that is just a natural part of the human experience. But when we find something we can do for someone else that's going to in some way make somebody else feel better, that gives us a real sense of value that comes from somewhere else. So if you've got a friend who is I've got a friend who's having a difficult time, and I went on Etsy and just sent her a gift box with a supportive note in it. And I felt so good for doing that. It brought me so much joy. I think it brought me more joy than it did her receiving what was probably a box of tat. But I think she appreciated the sentiment. So if there's somebody, even if it's just a text or a phone call or something that gets you outside of your world and is looking to do something positive in someone else's world, although it doesn't sound directly related to body image, I think those kind of things can help shift us out of how we might be feeling about ourselves. And the next one is again back to something external to consume. I would often find that when I was not feeling great, I was not motivated to sit down and write out my feelings or do any of the internal stuff. I wanted something external to make me feel better. That's how I ended up listening to audiobooks or watching YouTube videos. It might even be why you're here, but I've also released my book on YouTube for free. And chapter 2 is all about body image and how you can improve your body image, and the link to it is above there. And if you go into the notes below, you'll see the timestamps. You can go straight to the chapter and just listen to some of the things that I say about body image and how to shift how you feel about body image. And the last one I've deliberately left till last because it's one that is often shared a lot as a way to improve body image, and I think it can be a really annoying one to keep hearing when it's not how you're feeling, and that is gratitude. So we have these bodies that are way more than what they look like. They're these incredible instruments, machines that do so much for us on a regular basis. And the thing is with something like gratitude is it's a feeling. We talk about feeling grateful, but I also think it's an intention, and it can be a very cognitive process. And I think that's a good thing because it's where you can start. Because if you are feeling awful about your body, it's going to be really tricky to just flip that into feeling grateful for your body. So now you're just going to beat yourself up for the fact that you can't even feel grateful for your body. What a terrible person you must be. Or you'll just be like, I can't even look at that gratitude stuff. So just treating it as a cognitive, sending your brain off to find things to appreciate about your body. Doesn't matter if you feel appreciative or not, but it's the exercise of being willing to do that, because when you do that, you're making your brain do something it doesn't normally do. So you will be growing new neural networks, you will be creating new thought pathways, and that will feel like hard work in the beginning, but the more often you do it, the more natural it will start to feel, and then those feelings of appreciation, which just feel good, will hopefully start to arrive. And I talk a little bit more about that in my chapter in the book that I mentioned on the previous tip. So those are my 13 tips. Let me know what you think. Let me know which one was your favourite, and tell me if there's any that you had never thought of that you are going to try. And thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next video.